Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Today, we are going to take a look at how to use project ideation with Project Online. So, project ideation is a way to capture ideas, projects, requests, intake, whatever your organization uses before your project idea turns it into a true project, how to manage it, how to do a little bit of setup. But today, we're going to just walk through some pros and cons, why use an ideation list instead of capturing your projects inside Project Online, walk through a little bit of the back end setup and functionality. My name is Amanda Kuhlman. I've been working in the project management industry with Microsoft Project, with Project Online for over 8 years. And we use Project Online ourselves internally. So I'm in Microsoft Project every day myself, managing my own schedules and my own resources across all the different projects and deployments that we are managing at one time. So I have a lot of expertise, both just in working on my own schedules, the tips and tricks, what do I find helpful for my managing my own schedules, some recommendations for you, as well as deploying project server, online, Power BI, Excel, reporting, all of that for other our customers and clients as well. So I have a lot of expertise in those different areas, as well as Teams, the Power Platform, SharePoint, all of the Microsoft suite that likes to pull everything together into one place. I am certified in managing projects and portfolios with Microsoft PPM and Project and in SharePoint. A brief agenda for us today. I'm going to do a very short about us, about Integent, the services we provide. We're going to review the project ideation list as a whole. I do have two different examples that I will walk through. Talk about the different options for how to handle it, how to extend your project idea list even more than just creating a SharePoint list for capturing those kinds of requests. Talk about some reasons why you might want to use the SharePoint list versus Project Online, just some things as you are building out your deployment. You're walking through the different options of what to consider. I'll give you some ideas on why you might want to use one or the other, because I do see a lot of varied responses from using an idea list. Some love it, some use it in conjunction with planning in Microsoft Project Online, actually building out a schedule, and some do prefer it one over the other. It just depends on how evolved of a PMO process that you have or are trying to get to. Integent is a gold partner in project and portfolio management, as well as cloud productivity. And our core is project management, whether it's Microsoft Project, Project Online, Project for the web. We are a project management focused company. We have worked with a lot of different verticals, a lot of different clients, a lot of different industries. So we have a wide variety of experience in the types of schedules that we've worked with, as well as sizes of PMO. Some PMOs are 2 or 3 people, basically just a few project managers, and some are hundreds and hundreds of users that use Project Online. So we have a full variety of different types of projects that we have worked with. So whether it's the Project Online, enterprise project and resource management, we do deploy, we do train, best practice. We'll walk you all the way through, tell me what you do now, all the way through configuration, through validation, and then training your end users on the best practices and to use the new system. Business intelligence, extending Project Online. Just as we're going to look at project ideas is one way to extend your Project Online solution, it's the same for reporting. How can you put information into your schedules that make it easy, efficient for your project managers to use, but then also how can you surface that information for executives in your organization, whether that's Excel, Power BI, how can you pull out the key vital pieces of information that your stakeholders need to see? So using that business intelligence to build those reports. Microsoft Project best practices. Again, we've been working, and the team has been working with Project for many, many years, has some best practices of what to do and what not to do. Individual project support for your questions, because we do get a lot of questions. I've added a resource and it all of a sudden doubled my work. Why did it do that? I don't want it to do that. How do I best manage my schedule, for example, in a construction schedule, so that I can see it based on area that the construction is taking place, also type of construction that's taking place. And then SharePoint consulting as well, whether it's building out intranet sites, whether it's using Teams to manage some of your SharePoint content. We do have SharePoint. I need to add in some more project for the web and Power Apps in here as well, because we do also have a lot of experience in those areas. So I'm going to move straight into a project ideas list that I have previously created. So this project idea list, if you look at my navigation over here on the left, it is still related. It's under the same site collection as my project online instance. And when you're using a project idea list, if you are going to use this to then, once these ideas are approved or accepted, they are going to become true projects, I can use the information that I have gathered here to create a true project. But in order to do that, it does have to live under the same site collection. I'm going to click actually under this one as well. So most of your URLs for Project Online will come here. You'll have your SharePoint site, /sites/PWA. And this is your Project Online site collection. So what we have done is we have clicked on our gear icon, clicked on site contents, and we have created a brand new list under this site collection, the same one that my PWA instance is in. And that's what will lead me to then. I'm in my ideas list and my all items view here. So this is very important to making sure that the permissions will be managed in a streamlined fashion, and I can use what I capture here as creating a true project from it. Each of the SharePoint lists, when you very first create them, will only have a few fields. It'll have a title field, it may have a description field. It does not have very much in it. So building a project idea list involves a lot of what does your organization want to take a look at when they are considering whether or not to move forward with the project. And the great thing about the idea list, as well as Project Online, is that all of the fields are yours to define and yours to build. I'm going to click up here. Let's see, move back to this list here. I'm going to click on my list tab up here at the top, and then list settings, which is where we're going to spend a little bit of our time looking at the back end. I'm going to scroll down here, and my column section is all of the different fields that I have built out in this particular list. It does show them in alphabetical order, not necessarily the order that they are going to show up on your form. So I have whether it's been approved, the approved date, created as a default field, a description of the idea, what type of engagement, and I'm going to go ahead and click on my engagement type column or fields right here. Similar to setting your fields up for Project Online, each column or field in your intake list has certain metadata that you have to capture about it as well. So my engagement type column here is a choice column. So once I do say that this is going to be a choice, if I scroll down a little bit more, it has a section here for on each line. It says type each choice on a separate line. So I have said I can have a business development type of project, consulting and training, infrastructure, software development. I have defined this list for what my engagement type can be. Some options on if it wants to be a drop-down menu, if it's going to be a radio button that will show all the options at once. If you want to have any default values, and then of course up here, if this is going to be required. And I cancel, so I'm not making any changes to that one here. So I'm going to scroll on down. I also have an estimated cost field, which is a currency field. I click right on in here. Estimated cost, it's currency. This field is not required, and I can have a default currency in my format as well. So you have a lot of different ways that you can capture and how much as well. When you are building out your idea list, one of the first questions that I would ask is who is going to be the audience and how much information can you realistically expect them to complete when they're putting in a project request. I have worked with some that say, well, we already have in place this paper form, or maybe it's in Word, that is already 25 questions long. So they're already used to filling out that many questions. So let's just build it in here with a more automated process. We can do that, not a problem. We can build out all of those fields to mirror kind of what you already have. Let's keep that same functionality in place. On the other hand, some where this is very new, I have gotten a lot of organizations that say this kind of formal request process is going to be very new for my team. So previously, I get an email here, I get passed in the hallway, and that's how I get that request. And I want to formalize that process. And in that kind of a case, something more along the lines of 5, 7, 8 questions would be enough to get information from your team. Give me a description of the request. Give me a description of what program it might belong to. When do you want this to start? Give me a proposed start date. Keeping it very simple because you can always come back and add to what you see here. You don't all have to tackle it at your go live day 1 rollout of an idea list. So you can see this one here is a fairly simple form. Click back on my list name here to take me back. When I click on New Item, here is where I will see all of the different fields and you can change the order here that you would like to show them in for what I would like to capture. So mine's a very simple form. When somebody comes here, I want them to put the title, description, proposed start date, what program it belongs to. Again, I chose to have that show as a dropdown. My engagement type, my estimated cost. This is all that my requester is required to complete. So I'm going to go ahead and say, this is a project online deployment project. And we're going to say client wants to deploy for 250 users. We can say they'd like to start this in June. That's not what it is. It is we'll say the training project, consulting. All right, and I can go ahead and save my idea here. Oops, it wouldn't be true if I didn't have a spelling error. So once you have created that intake item, or the user has the requester, whoever it is, it's going to have permissions to this list. I'm going to refresh my page one time. There are a couple of other options on how you want the information to come. So here is the new item I created. I have created a view here that will show me all items. It is the default. And then I have one that's going to group them for me by program. So you can have, just like Project Center, different ways to see your idea list. I can see the description, some of the different data points here, but I have also built out in this idea list an approval workflow. I have used SharePoint Designer in this particular list, but more recently Power Automate will be what you'll want to use for your approval process. It will automatically kick off in the background. It will be a behind the scenes process. Typically, as soon as somebody creates an item, it's going to email the approver. It's going to say you have a new request that's been added to your list. Click here to see the details, click here to approve, but you can build out that Power Automate process to be very simple, a one-step approval. Somebody just needs to look at what's been submitted and they need to either approve or reject. Or you can have it be a multi-stage type of approval. First, it needs to go to the manager, then it needs to go to the department head, and then it needs to go to the CIO, for example. So you can have a variety of workflows as well, whether they're just email notifications or task approvals or a combination of the two. You can also extend this by using Microsoft Forms. Have a form that's been created that gets posted onto your SharePoint intranet site. That is where your users will interact with the form. They'll put in all of their information. You build a Power Automate process on the back end to grab all of that information and put it in this list that we've built. And then it'll kick off a workflow from there. So there are several different components and different types of technologies that you can use to add onto each other to build this complete package of your request process. And again, it does not all have to be at the same time. You can do this in an iterative process once you're comfortable with how you are deploying the idea list. Especially with teams now, using those kinds of things like the approvals, using Power Automate or forms is a great way to add them to some of your existing teams. Maybe you have a team for IT Everybody has access to view some of the information about there, and they know if you want to create an IT project, you need to go there to that team in your Teams window and submit your project request. So on this list, clicked on it again, there are a couple ways to extend it, but one of the main benefits in having your idea list live here under your site collection, but as a SharePoint list, is the permissions and the licensing. To get to this SharePoint list, users do not have to have a project online license. They only need to have a SharePoint, access to SharePoint, which is typically given through any e-license that your company uses. And they have to be in your O365 directory. So they don't necessarily need to get into any of this information here, Project Center, Resource Center, timesheets. If they're licensed, they can. But if you have outside users that do not belong to Project Intake, they can still, Project Online, they can still come to this list and submit a new item. They do have to have permissions here. So we would want to modify the permissions a little bit, but in terms of licensing, they do not need to have a Project Online license. The idea list is also very beneficial in keeping your project center free from project requests that are never going to become true projects. Depending on how big your organization is, perhaps you get 3 to 5 requests for projects every day. You know, that really adds up. Then you have 15 to 25 in a week, and maybe 2 of those become true projects. This provides a way for all of this information to live right here until you're ready to have a schedule, you're ready to do resource loading, you're ready to do that portfolio analysis. So this does provide a way to kind of help funnel that information in, first to one place, and then funnel it even further for what truly needs to live with the project schedule and Project Online. However, with that being said, if you are considering using the ideation list for planning, one very important thing to keep in mind is that if your company is using portfolio analysis to analyze your projects, to take a group of 6 projects, and you're going to use your business drivers. We will talk about more about portfolio analysis next week, but if you're going to use business drivers, you're going to use a cost field, you're going to use your generic resource planning to really objectively look at a group of projects to decide if you're going to move forward, then the project does need to live in Project Center. So if that kind of affects how you're going to do your planning process, then you might want to consider creating your projects directly inside Project Online. Or again, you can have a blend. You can have this as your first funnel process, and then your project to live in here once it's truly being considered as an actual project. Anything that lives in the idea list here will not be available for you to choose for portfolio analysis. It does need to live inside Project Center. All right, so I click back on my project ideas. This idea here is still sitting under approval required, but we are going to say this idea has been approved. We've gone through the approval process, which I do actually have some emails that get sent out and generated. If you do use SharePoint Designer or Power Automate, either one will give you the option to create notifications where you can customize what the email is going to say. It can pull pieces of information from your idea list and put it in an email. A new idea has been created. Here's the title, here's who created it, here's the description, and you can put some data points in the email. It is highly customizable in terms of how much information you want to put in the email. And you can also generate a task process. And here is where the approver would come in and interact with it to approve it to move it forwards, whether that's move it forwards to another stage in your workflow for the approval process, or to go ahead and say it's an approved project. Again, depends on how complicated your approval process will be. Once this idea is ready to become a project. I'm ready to commit to this project. We need to get it into our pipeline so I can resource load it, so I can make sure we're going to have enough people for it. We can hit the timeline. I need to start providing some project status reporting on it. Then I can select the item right here, click up here in my items, and one of the main reasons it is so important that this belongs under the same URL as Project Online, that same site collection, is because I will have the option to create projects. And again, if you hover, it'll say that you can create a project web app or project online project based on any of the information that I have captured so far in this item. So I can select the item here, click Create Projects, and it will give me this Create Projects in Project Web App dialog box. This top section up here will show you how information in your current list, in your column name, our description, proposed start date, all of the columns that I have identified in my idea list. And if I'm going to map them over to something in PWA, and it'll tell you right here exactly how it's going to map. My title is going to become my project name. My description is going to become the description. My proposed start date becomes the start date. Program. And you can see it just is going to map up each one. And we can do this on the back end, which I'll show you in just a moment, so that each user does not have to do this mapping every time you create a project. It can be something that is set by default. One very important thing about doing these mappings is if your column names here, like your lookup values, for example, do not match exactly as they do in your project online fields, then that information will not map correctly. And you'll either get one of two options. One that says your project created in project online, but there wasn't a matching value for this one field, so we didn't do anything with it. Or you will receive an error that says we couldn't create it because there was a discrepancy in this field. Typically, it just won't move over that information. But if you are going to be promoting objects from the idea list to Project Online, if you add a new lookup value to Project Online, you need to come and add it here as well as a new choice value. That way, it will continuously move over all of the correct information at one time. You can see these ones down here. We're going to live only in Project Intake, and they will not move to any place in Project Online. There's no mapping value here. So all of this should be preset, so your users don't have to worry about that. Your enterprise project type here will be the same drop-down list that you see from inside Project Center. When you click that new button, all of these are going to have a different schedule. They could have a different workflow behind them. All of the enterprise project types that you have defined will show up in this list. And here's a way for you to say, I'm going to create this project, and it is going to be a project with a workflow. That's my enterprise project type. Then I can go ahead and hit my Create Projects button. Going to think for a minute. It's going to take all of my information and fields from here, and it's going to create a true project inside Project Online. And then once it does, it refreshes. Oh, let's see what we did here. Oh, look, I created this perfect example. It does say, congratulations, one of one projects has been created, which you should only do one at a time. But it did have a warning here, and this is because my program my values don't match. So exactly the thing I was just warning about, my program in my idea list and my program fields in Project Online do not have matching values. So it did create the project, and we'll move over in just a second, but it couldn't move over my program value because it didn't match to anything inside Project Online. So we're going to move over to Project Center in just a moment, but one important thing to note is you can only promote items one time. So if I was to take this same project and try to create another project from it, you will get this message up at the top that says a project already exists. You have to choose something that has not already been converted to a project inside Project Online. So that is one important thing to keep in mind. Only move over those items when you are ready, when they will become a true project and you don't need to come back here. Click on my projects. Here is my new Project Online deployment project. If I click straight on the name here, it jumps straight into my Project Online workflow. And if I click on initiate, it did move over my project budget information from my idea list. And of course, any other fields that were in this part of the workflow that moved over would populate here for you as well. Mapping your information from your idea list to Project Online is something that you also will do in your list settings. It is in the backend settings here, and it is all the way at the bottom of the left top part of your screen that says Project Server Settings. So if we click here, here is where we are going to define what the default values will be. So here, again, the same as our Create Projects box. This is our column name in my idea list or your intake list. Here is the type, and then here are the fields. And you'll see there are limited options based on the data type or the data type. So for example, I have currency, so I choose my dropdown. The only field I have is the only other currency field that I have in Project Online. I can't map a SharePoint currency field to a free text field in Project Online. For example, they do have to match with their data type. My engagement type is a choice field, so if I choose my dropdown here, these are the different values that I can use to map it over with. Usually I try to name them the same. So if I ever need to hand off administering this list to somebody else, they can easily see how this information fits together. Nobody needs to guess. So as you add fields to this list, you will just choose your dropdown and map those fields over. So that is a brief walkthrough of our project idea list, just a short 30-minute demo of some of the different options, a few of the backend settings, and why you might want to use a project idea list over doing your project planning inside Project Online. So if you have any follow-up questions, if you have any, to the right place here, oops. If you have any questions, if you have any follow-ups, you have any specifics, how can I do this? You can send me a follow-up directly at amanda.coleman@integent.com, or you can email our main info line at info@integent.com. Appreciate everyone's attendance for today's webinar, and I will see you next week. Thank you.